Have you ever wondered where the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place? Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your host, Brian Berneman, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world. We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers. From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world.
Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and I have the pleasure to be joined all the way in South Carolina in the US by Amber Hollingsworth. Thank you so much, Amber, for reconnecting once more and to be able to share this space and your experience. I'm sure it's going to be a really wonderful conversation. Before we get into that, for everyone that is watching and listening to us, I would love it if you can share a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, by training, I am an addiction therapist. I've been doing that for more than 20 years now. Now, I kind of accidentally landed here, as I like to say. Most people that get into my field purposefully get into the field, usually because they're in recovery or, like a personal experience. And I got here quite by accident, but sometimes you just land where you're supposed to be and you just feel it. So I've been doing this 20 years, working with people who have addictions. Specifically, a lot of my work is with people who, and this is common with addictions, who are reluctant to be talking to me, and that's understandable. So I've developed some really good skills at how to engage people who are resistant, reluctant, in denial. And these days I create content on YouTube. So I'm sort of half therapist, half content creator. And I teach families on the content how to help a loved one who has an addiction.
Beautiful. Thank you, Amber, for sharing that. It's always really interesting, as well for me, as I was sharing last time when we were talking, how a lot of times most of the people that are in our spaces that are supporting others have that lived experience, and some of us didn't experience everything that they experienced, but we have some understandings, and after so many years of experience, of course, it makes it easier to be able to be in this space. So yeah, I really appreciate that. That's how it's been. You accidentally got into this space, and now you're doing this.
That's right. Yeah. Now I do come from an addicted family. So I feel like that gives me some lived experience, but it's not really why I got in the field. The crazy story about that is like, I didn't even realize it till I was already in the field. Not that I didn't realize my family were doing drugs and alcohol, but I wouldn't have labeled it addiction, because when you grow up in it and it's your normal, you don't think anything strange about it. So people think, well, that's why you got in the field. And I'm like, well, actually not. I didn't even know it till I was in here already.
And just so that, because I have this a lot of times with clients, and when they talk about family members and they start to share their experiences, I'm like, that's an addiction. And they haven't seen it as that. Can you share a little bit so that we have, the framework or the understanding for everyone listening? What is an addiction, or how do you see that?
The sort of simplest way to explain it is someone continues to do something despite the fact that it's given them a lot of negative consequences. That's just the brief, simplified way to look at it.
Yeah. I usually say the same. I usually say it's when you know that you have an unhealthy, whatever unhealthy might mean, behavior, and you cannot stop it. That it's stronger than you. It has a bigger pull than your active, trying to action something different, and you can't. And I think that it's important, this framework, because a lot of times, and majority of people that I see equate addiction to drugs or alcohol, perhaps a little bit to gambling as well. But there's more than just that.
Right. It's really just sort of like obsessive behavior, honestly. And Some people are just more prone to obsessive behavior. And honestly, it's not even that bad as long as it's pointed in the right direction. But when it starts to work against you, that's when we start calling it addiction.
Yes. So tell me a little bit, Amber, in terms of your work, because I know that you not only work with addiction, you also work with families. And so it's about, helping guide families to heal. Can you share a little bit about that in terms of your work? And if you'd like perhaps to share some examples.
Sure, yeah. Well, having dealt with people who have addictions for so long now and really gone through what works and what doesn't work, the thing that was on my heart was to help families understand that everything they're being told generally by doctors, friends, society, they're being told like, you got to have this tough love approach. They're being told like, basically there's nothing you can do to help someone. You just have to back up, cross your fingers, hope they hit a bottom, and decide they want recovery for themselves. And when that's your spouse or your kid or someone, you deeply love, that's not an acceptable answer. And so my mission is really helping these families to see, actually, there's a lot you can do. And I teach them how to do it because I've been dealing with people who didn't want to deal with me initially from the get-go. So all of my experience is in how do you engage people in the process. So I teach them how to do it. And it's sort of the opposite of the whole tough love approach.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because the hit rock bottom is such an ingrained thing in our society that a lot of times when I see people, I'm like, let's not wait. Like I talk in the podcast a lot about that. Let's not wait until we hit rock bottom to actually make a change. And sometimes, sometimes it happens. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen or that it's not a good stepping stone from doing things, but also if we're able to prevent that, as you're saying, then why get to that place where we can redirect our experience into something more helpful when we haven't been in that phase. And I think that it's really interesting that you had this experience that I've had a few times through the years. That is, someone sends someone to see me. And it wasn't them coming to see me. It was like my wife told me that I need to come and see you.
That's the number one reason people come to see me, Brian. My wife is making me do this or else. That's the number one reason.
But there's of course, there's a reluctance there. They are not open to that. And I think that, what you're sharing about, okay, you learned this and now you're sharing it with the family members. It's so important because, it's not something that I even thought about. I know how to work with people and to help them, support them to open up during our work together, but I haven't even thought of this is something that then I can talk to the wife about, that is the one that sent them here, and understand how to do that. So yeah, I'd love to know a little bit more if you could share, Amber, about that. What does that look like? How do you help them?
Yeah. But before I tell you that, when you were just saying that, about how it never occurred to you to maybe share that with the wife, it made me smile because it kind of made me have a flashback and remember, to be 100% honest, the big part of the reason why I teach family members this is because if I don't, they sabotage everything I'm trying to do. So do I do it because I feel for them and I totally get it? Absolutely, 100%. Do I also do it because of my own self-preservation? Because a lot of times when family members are trying to help someone, they can have all the good intentions in the world, but usually they're following their instinct, and usually it's the opposite of what they need to be doing. And the reason it sabotages my work is because when that's going on, the only thing that the person will talk to me about is their frustration with this family member, controlling them or nagging them or criticizing them and, all the things. And so I'm like, I have to get them to stop doing it. And so that's where this whole, let me work with the family too piece comes in, because it just wasn't working. It was taking years to solve a problem that I could solve in 6 months if they would stop doing what they're doing. So I'm just confessing my own selfish reasons there.
Beautiful.
But it kind of leads into what is that work and what do you do? The first thing I teach family members is to get out of the bag I roll. when it comes to addiction, like the fuel for it is self-pity and resentment. And naturally, the family member, usually multiple of them, but at least one primary family member, which is usually the spouse or the parent. It's somebody that lives with this person usually, maybe a sibling occasionally. They're usually the first person to see the issue, and they're usually quite sort of in tune kind of a person. They're empathetic, like they're sort of lined up with this person. They get this person. And so when the person they love is off, they feel that strongly, like all of their alarm bells start going off. So they do what we naturally do. Like they run in and they try to say, wait, you're making a bad decision. You're about to blow up your life, or you're about to blow up our life. And they try to get the brakes on it. And what that does is it makes the person with the problem feel attacked, right? And feel defensive. And so what happens is they end up defending this behavior that actually they probably stopped liking a long time ago, but now they're defending it because they feel like someone's trying to force them to not do it, have it, whatever. And so it makes them hold on for longer. So the first step is you gotta not play the villain in this story, because it distracts the person from being able to see their own situation and listen to their own conscience. They're so busy fighting with you, they can't even hear their own like conscious voice about what they want to do.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing, this family dynamics, or like as you're saying, all of this, because it can so many times, as you're saying, even with the intention of creating the change, it can actually keep it going. The dynamic itself, like it's what actually keeps on repeating the same behavior, because that's the dynamic. And it's so interesting. Like I work a lot with systemic constellations or family constellations as a way of healing, and a lot of times we bring in that third energy in between these individuals to work with that energy, so that energy can also change in order for that
loop sign, because that's exactly what it is. It's like this cycle that won't stop.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
You mentioned the other time when we were talking, Amber, about the when you are trying to help the family members, that you use the pull not push approach. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yes. So when you're pushing, and that can look like trying to get the person to see the severity of the problem. It can look like trying to recruit other people to come talk to this person, people in the church or friends or whoever, to, maybe if they talk to them, they'll stop. It can look like sending them articles about what this is doing to their health, like all these different ways of trying to push information in, It just, what happens is people feel forced. And when we feel forced, even if it's something we want to do, if we feel forced, we don't want to do it because we don't want to feel forced. And so people start to lock down and shut down and get defensive against that. When the truth is, and I'm saying teenager up to 80 years old, I have dealt with, and deep down inside, when someone's doing something that's shooting themselves in the foot, there's something they don't like about it. Like there's already motivation inside of them that wants to get out of this cycle. And when you're pushing, you're blocking that thing that's already in there from surfacing. So after you're out of the bad guy role, what I try to teach families to do is go in, look inside of your loved one and find what's already there and see if you can harvest it out instead of trying to push what you think in. It works so much better, because then it's coming from them, and it just makes them buy into the whole process because it's them, it's their feelings. So it's like, instead of talking to them about how you feel, try to get them to talk to you about how they feel. And that's how you're going to find someone's motivation and pull it forward.
Yes. It's so interesting, this. And sometimes, it's, as you're saying, it's the best of intentions to try and, and share how perhaps destructive this is, or how this is, being a challenging thing and things like that, instead of, as you're saying, like, just, this is not about me, this is about them. And
right.
What are they experiencing? Like, why is that part of their life? What are they in a sense, like I always
Yeah.
in my work, I often say to my clients, it's like this is a survival mechanism. So there's something that this destructive behavior, it's actually protecting them from something underneath that. So what is that underneath
Yes.
that they
It serves some purpose for them, right? Yeah, it's
yeah
doing something for them that they like or need. And
yeah
so they keep going back to it.
yeah and
Definitely. Yeah.
I'd love to know with your approach, because in my approach with that, we work on bringing that mechanism of survival and actually being able to look at it, being able to feel into it, being able to bring gratitude that it's been protecting for something deeper. And in that way, instead of trying to get rid of it, we embrace it, but knowing this is not really what I need to work on. What I need to work on is that other thing that this is protecting me from.
So the lower, the underneath thing. Exactly, right? So it's like, I feel like when you can acknowledge why, you don't have to agree with what someone's doing, but you can probably empathize and acknowledge with why they might want to do that, right? Like let's say if your partner's coming home and they're drinking every day after work, you may not agree with that, but you could probably understand why someone might want to relax after work every day, right? You can have empathy for that. And when you can acknowledge their point of view, and when you can acknowledge that there are good things about whatever they're doing, their walls come down immediately, because they're like, okay, you hear me, you see me, and they're just less defensive overall. So sometimes it's easier to just think about it in another context. It's like if you have a teenager who's dating someone that's toxic, right? And the more you try to get them to break up with this person, the more they're going to cling on. Like, we know that, right? But if you have an open relationship with your teen and then they're talking to you about how, they're frustrated with their partner because they did this and that, and you just be real cool and let them talk through that, they'll talk themselves out of it, right? You're just being that safe place. That's what I mean when I say pull it out of them, because it's already in there. So I always say, as a family, your job is just not to block it, because it's already there.
And I'm curious, Amber, because most likely in your work, you not only work with the individual that has this addiction and the family members, but most likely, and at least this is in my work a lot, the addiction repeats. Like, it's sometimes not only an energetic, but a learned behavior. So, how have you worked with families that perhaps, this isn't only with one person, this is multiple people and a repeated tendency?
I think that's a super complicated question, because it can show up in a lot of different ways. Like, you can have maybe two people in a family system struggling with something at once, or you can have like generational addictive patterns, like where, my father had it and his father had it and now I have it, and so it kind of depends on, is it, are we dealing with it actively in the here and now? Are we dealing with it because it's being passed down? And when it's being passed down, it can be really complicated, because, like, let's say you grew up with a parent that had an addiction, and you always told yourself, I'm never going to be that way. I'm never going to be that way. And what can happen is it can make it worse, because even though you're sort of on that same path, you're like, well, I'm not doing what they were doing. And you're comparing like their end stage version of it. And it can keep you in denial longer, because now in your head, this is what an addict looks like, or this is what an alcoholic looks like. And you're thinking about extreme. And so you think, as long as I'm not dad, then I'm okay. So it can get really complicated, and then there's like finger pointing. It's just a mess.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me that I see is that generational pattern, the repetition, and I think that it's a really fascinating thing, because one, as you're saying, like there's an understanding of that, there's an aversion of that, and sometimes that aversion is what actually leads us to that place, because we are then like kind of like the opposite, and we get into that same energy, or we're carrying things for other people that came before, and that's a really really challenging space to navigate, because it's not a lot of times our thing, but we are still carrying it, and we need to deal with it because others weren't able to. And I think that as well, like, this is something that I see so much, that when someone that I'm working with is able to heal this isn't just healing for themselves. This is healing for everyone in the family. I'd love if you have some, like some experiences or some examples of this, in terms of like the impact that you have seen in the families and not only in the person.
I think that's what makes this work worthwhile, right? Because it's like you said, but it's not just I'm helping this person to help this person get better. It's because when you help that one person, you've helped everyone that cares about them, and you've helped like the larger community as a whole. Like one of my clients who I helped recently, who had a gambling addiction, an online gambling addiction. We got her to redirect that energy, and she's now a content creator, and she's like killing it, because now she takes all of that, like, I want to win this game, and I'm going to run the numbers, and she puts it towards something for the good. And not only is she that, but she's a physician. So she's helping people with all this content she's creating. So it's like she's got, 100,000 people who watch her now. So not only has it helped her family, but now she's helping all these people, and it just multiplies itself, and it's so exciting to get to watch.
Beautiful. That's so cool. It's so interesting how, like someone that gets that understanding and then are able to share it because they have a talent for something. And like I had this client like some years ago, that they were artists, and after they were able to heal this, they were able to share, like, in a sense, the process of, through their art, the process of being in that, as they said, that darkness, and then the process of healing, and then how it looks on the other side, and being able to share this art with the world. It's so beautiful. And now that you share, Amber, this content creator with this girl, you turned into content creator as well, as you shared. Can you share a little bit about that? Like, did you also accidentally started doing that? Was it, like, I have something here to share. Like, this is how we expand the message. What was the process there?
It wasn't quite as accidental, but I definitely had no idea what I was getting myself into. Like, the magnet, it's kind of like getting married. If you just can't even understand it. It's how big it is till you do it. So I got into it on purpose, but I definitely didn't know what I was getting into, or sort of semi on purpose. That whole family thing I was explaining to you, when I started my practice, I dealt with the whole family system, and I had a special way I did that. I actually gave the family member a counselor and the addicted person a counselor, which was usually me. We call it lawyering. Like, everybody got their advocate so that everybody felt like I got somebody who sees my side. And then the counselors behind the scene, we would sort of hash most of it out behind the scenes. If your person will quit, spying on the tracker and watching everything I'm doing, we'll quit. Like, it's sort of like mediation behind the scenes. And so that's how the practice ran. Well, people would say, say that again. I wish I had that written down, or I wish I had that recorded. I could just play that again. Like, I need to hear that. And I thought, well, I can do that. At the time, YouTube was somewhat popular. And I thought, well, I could just put the stuff, like, because when you're working with clients, you find yourself saying the same thing over and over. Like, I'll give the brain talk, and and I was like, I'll just record it, and then I'll just give them the link, because then I won't have to, again, self-preservation for myself. I won't have to do that. Well, so that was the original thought, just by creating content, was just for my clients to access. But then it grew into just something bigger, because especially for the family member part, there's nothing out there for them. And they're the ones looking for help. The people with the addictions, they're not really looking for help. But the families are desperate. I mean, they're like begging for help, and everywhere they turn, they're being told there's nothing they can do. So the more I ran into that, the more I felt compelled to help with that specific piece of the problem.
And so now you have this platform. How are people, like interacting with it? Are people, like sharing it as well with other family members? How's that, like in your experience or feedback that people have given you?
Yeah. Well, definitely people share it, but I say on my content a lot because here's what happens. Here's what these family members do because they fall into the villain role. I'll have a video. Maybe it's talking about like manipulative behaviors or something, right? Or someone in denial, right? Or something like that. And the family member, they're going to think, oh, I'm going to send this to my person who does this so they can hear. So I say, do not use my videos as a weapon. Like if you're doing that, you're not listening to me, right? So I'm like, don't take this video that you think is like something someone needs to hear, a confrontation of some sort, and send it. So it's almost like I have to tell them not to share it in that way.
Yeah.
I know it's like an instinct, like, oh, if they hear Amber say it. But what happens is then it's like, I'm like, if I met your loved one, I wouldn't come out the gate confronting them. Like you can't, like you got to warm that up. You can't do it that way.
Yeah.
So I teach them when to share and how to share actually, so that it doesn't backfire on them.
Yeah, because I would categorize that as part of the pushing, and I'm sending them that content as a way of pushing.
Yeah, it's like now you're still doing what I'm telling you not to do, right? Right.
Yeah, well, and I think it's one of the powerful things when I started doing the podcast, when I started sharing the videos, and part of it was because there was a lot of people that were asking for these things to be recorded, or they weren't in person where I was, or they wanted to start doing that. And what I have found as well is that not only it's helpful for them, but it's a beautiful space for me because I get to meet people like you. I get to meet a lot of amazing people. I get to hear a lot of different stories, perspectives, things that then, if I wasn't doing this, I wouldn't have not only like the platform, but I wouldn't have this space for me to connect with awesome people that are all over the world doing amazing things with slightly different perspectives, slightly different ways. And there's always something in there, because then this is something that I often share, is that, if someone comes to see me and I'm like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm the right person, but, Amber might be the right person for this. Now I know so many more people that I'm able to, to refer, and I'm able to share with people, because at least this is my approach is I'm not always the best person for everyone. So I much rather know someone and send them their way.
Right. Now you have so much more resources and access and ways to help people. Yeah. I'm just like a little country girl from like a little town in the middle of nowhere, like seriously. And so it's wild for me to be talking to people all over the world, talking to you across the world right now. It's really cool. And to be helping people that are literally in countries I've never even heard of. It's wild. But one thing it reminds me is addiction is addiction is addiction. It doesn't matter where it's at. It follows the same playbook. So it's really interesting.
Yeah. It's like I remember one of my teachers that he used to say, it's the human experience. The human experience is, yes, it's individualized. And we always, at some point with certain things, we need to work on things individually. It's not the one size fits all. Yet, human experience shares a lot of commonality. And it's like there's something in there that is kind of like yes, it's quite similar. And as you're saying, addiction is addiction. Of obsessive behavior is obsessive behavior. Belief is belief. Like whether it is that belief, it's belief, and how that's impacting our life. And then survival mechanisms are survival mechanisms. It doesn't matter if it's A, B, C, D. Like it's a survival mechanism. So there's that,
because it is. It's a human experience. Like you can count on it. Like there's sort of like the laws of psychology here that you can predictively count on. And even all the stuff that I teach to family members, I teach it related to addiction, but it works on anything. If you're dealing with a teenager that has a bad habit, or a best friend that's in a bad relationship, or somebody who's in a job they need to quit. Like this is how I teach people how to help someone who has a problem that's stuck. any of the things I teach, it's just human psychology. It's not really addict psychology. It's just that, and what I like to say is if it works on someone that has an addiction whose brain is literally hijacked by a substance, and it works really well on other people. So it's pretty universal.
Yeah. I'd love to know, Amber, like with all of this, is there, as you're sharing, like it doesn't matter, but are there some behaviors or addictive behaviors that are potentially more challenging for the family members that you've seen? Of course, like I can assume a lot of things and based on my experience, but I want to know with your experience, like what has been that like in terms of more destructive for the family member.
I think family members would probably universally tell you that the worst part of all of it is the lies. It's not even what's happening. It's the lying, and that lying becomes this giant power struggle between them and the person. It's like, the family member, they know something's up. They know it's not good. Maybe they don't know exactly 100%, but they know, right? And so they're trying to get this person to admit it, and this person's not trying to admit it. And so they use all these deflection techniques that minimize it, rationalize it, tell you it's not even happening, gaslighting, manipulation, tell you, well, you have your stuff too. Like, there's just all these techniques. And so when that's happening and then they're being dishonest about it, the family member gets in this cycle of trying to gather evidence. It's like I say, they get like a policeman badge and they like go around like trying to collect forensic evidence. And they think, if I can just get all this evidence and put it in their face, then they're definitely going to admit it. And it creates this really bad cycle, which doesn't even work. You can have all the evidence in the world and they're still going to respond that same way with all those deflection techniques. In fact, they're really just going to start a giant fight, and the conversation is going to end in screaming at best. And so that's the cycle. And the family member feels so conflicted because part of them knows that they know. And then when all this happens, then they start to second guess, maybe I am crazy. Maybe I am the one making them drink. And then they go back and forth. And it's like, that is probably the hardest piece, I think, for family members.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And if you had to share, I'm sure that some of the things that you have shared have been that, but if you have to share, like 3 things or some of the top tips that you could share with someone that is now hearing this and it's like, oh, like I have someone in my family dealing with addiction. What are the top 3 things that you would say, okay, this is how you start?
Okay, yeah. So I teach a process that we call like the invisible intervention. It's not like the intervention like you see on TV where you confront the person, you read the letters, you tell them if they don't stop, all these bad things. It's sort of a behind the scenes where you get the person to come to terms with it and decide what to do. And so one of the things that we teach in the invisible intervention is that the family member is going to have the instinct to want to show the person how severe the problem is by showing them just like, this is awful. This is having a terrible impact on our kids. This is like ruining your health. You're going to die. Like they want to like show the magnitude. What they don't realize is that they're dealing with a person that's scared and defensive. If you make it scarier, they're going to be more defensive. And so counter your instinct. I'm like, if you actually just make the problem seem smaller and more fixable, they might be more willing to look at it and work on it. And I know that it sounds crazy, like, no, because I don't want to minimize it because it's not little. I'm like, yeah, but you're giving, you have to give people information in a way that they can digest and work with. And if you're telling me you're a terrible alcoholic and you're a horrible mom and you're a drunk and you're going to have to change everything in your life to fix it, and you're going to have to go to meetings every day for the rest of your life, and you're never going to be able to do it again. Like everything about the way we try to sell recovery, I call it, is horrible. Like it's just bad salesmanship. Like really, I'm like, who wants that? Like who wants to say, okay, yeah, that's me. I think that's for me. No one. So if we find ways to present the issue, like when I deal with people, and I deal a lot with these days I deal a lot with like really highly functional addicts and alcoholics. And I'll say, well, dude, no wonder you end up with this problem. Like I deal a lot with businessmen. And I'll say, yeah, all the businessmen drink too much. Here's why. And then I give them a list and they're like, I know, right? I'm like, yeah, it's half your job to take people out and get them drunk, isn't it? It's, you got to deal with clients in it. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, no wonder this happened to you. So it's like a way of this person being able to say, yes, I have this problem, but it doesn't mean I'm a horrible person. And I'm like, don't worry, we're going to fix this. We got a million things. Let's plan A. Well, let's try this first. Let's try. And so I come at it in this way that's like not nearly as scary. And then they're like on board with it. As opposed to if I'm saying, you know, I can't believe you're doing this to your family. Like you're an idiot. You know, like that's not, they don't like that. So make it seem less scary, not more scary. That's tip number one. Tip number two is don't try to confront someone in a way that confronts the way they see themselves, their identity, right? So someone sees themselves as a good parent or a hard worker or a creative person or responsible or have integrity. You may have an instinct to want to get them to see how they're not those things they think they are, but that doesn't work. Actually, what works better is to remind them of who they really are, to remind them that they're a great parent, to remind them that they're responsible, reliable, integrity. And what happens is because that's true for them, and that probably is true for who they really are. And then when they fall short of that, they notice. So you're bringing their values to the surface by positively reinforcing them. It has to be true. You can't make it up. It needs to be true. And then if their behavior isn't congruent with that, they notice that. It creates this, the fancy word is cognitive dissonance, which is like psychological uncomfortableness. And then they want to correct that on their own. And that's another way of pulling it forward, right? So it's like if I'm like, tell somebody, you know, I always love the way you put the kids first and you make time for them, right? And I say that to you. And next week, you forget that you were supposed to bring the snacks to the soccer game or whatever it was. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to feel your own like disappointment, guilt, remorse, and that's going to motivate you to change. As opposed to if I wait till you don't show up to soccer and then I tell you all the things, then you're just going to defend your behavior. So you don't want to work against how someone sees themselves. In fact, you want to lean into it. You know, I would say, I know you're going to conquer this problem because you don't let anything get in your way. And then I'll give them 5 examples of problems they've conquered in the past. Like I lean into that in a genuine way, and that motivates people to get better. It's just the opposite of this tough love, let me cut you off, let me make you suffer, and that's going to make you get better faster. In my experience, this other way makes people get better faster.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It's I think that for everybody that is watching or listening, just rewind, go back, listen to this again, because it is important. You know, I think that these are some of the things a lot of times that we need to remind ourselves of, as we need to then remind, as you're saying, how to remind this to others. We need to remind ourselves of this approach, of you know, being kind as well. Like that's a word for me. It's being kind, understanding.
Being kind, right?
That doesn't mean putting up with it. That just means understanding, well, like this approach is an approach that I can take to be able to actually help them solve this by either themselves or with our support.
Right. I have to remind myself, if you're watching this and you're thinking, you have to remind yourself, I have to remind myself. I'm like the one out here, you know, saying it every day on video. But I have a teenage son right now who's like about to turn 15. So we're like in prime, you know, land of difficulty. And I'll find myself, what happens is you just want to like speed it up. You get impatient and you want somebody to figure something out faster. So you just want to like tell them they're wrong or tell them the answer. I have the instinct just as much as anyone else does. It's human, you know, and I'll do it wrong and I'll get like a resistance and then I'll be like, okay, you're doing it, Amber. Like I have to give myself a little therapy talk because we all do that. And it comes from a place of love. It's just not effective. Yeah.
And it's it's a learned behavior as well. It's something that we see from outside. It's the speed and as you're saying that tough love as well. And it's something that at least in my worldview, that was something that I saw outside. That's the way that you do things. That's the way that you help. That's the way that you approach others. And then learning, okay, like I need to soften, I need to allow, I need to be kind first with myself and then with others, and how the approach then can bring such a different outcome.
Yeah, you're so right, Brian. I mean, it's definitely what we've seen and what we've learned. And on top of that, I'll just add on to what you said, because it's spot on, is that it's also what's reinforced. So the people in your life, anyone in your life that knows you're dealing with it, will be telling you that that's exactly what you need to do, and judging you if you're not, like, and making you feel guilty if you're not doing all those old school things. And so that just makes it even that much harder, because then people are like, I'll tell you what, I wouldn't put up with that, and I would tell him this, and I would kick that person out, and I'd cut them. You got everyone in your life, that thinks they know. I call it big talk. They all just big talk. They think they know everything, and they're telling you. And then it brings you back to that, like, maybe I am wrong place. And then you get all like confused. But when you stop to think about it, when I tell these techniques, they're not like overly complicated. And then when I'm talking about, people like shaking their head because they're like, yeah, I know that. I'm like, yeah, we do. Like, this is like, it's not, like, of course. But it's just, it's like trying not to hit the brakes when you're sliding on ice, even though you know better, right? It's just having to override your instinct, your fear responses.
Yeah, and it's a lot of times as well. I think that's just reminding ourselves a lot of times, as you're saying, like, we know this. It's not that we don't know this, it's we need to remind ourselves. And sometimes it's almost constantly, as you're saying, even those that we know this, it doesn't always show up in our lives in that way. So, like, it's something that the more that we remind ourselves and the more that we are aware of it, the easier it is to then approach life in this way. And Amber, before we start to wrap up for this conversation, what is one thing that you wish everyone in the world knew?
I wish that everyone in the world knew that addiction specifically is a very solvable problem. And despite everyone telling you that you're powerless and there's nothing you can do, no matter which side of this issue you're on, that's not true. I see people solve this problem every day, and most of them solve it without ever having to go to treatment, like the majority. So don't listen to all that negativity, because it makes you want to give up and throw your hands up. And I know maybe you've tried 100 things and they haven't worked, but you probably haven't tried the right thing, and it will work.
Thank you so much, Amber, for taking the time and for sharing all of this. Hopefully, as I said, for everyone watching and listening, hopefully you're able to take some of this, whether as we're saying, there's addiction, or whether there's not, because this can be used for a lot of things in life. Before we go, Amber, if people are resonating with you, if they want to explore more, where can they find you? Where can they hear more about you?
Well, I'm on all the socials, but the best place to find me is on YouTube. I'm primarily a YouTuber, and my channel is called, and this is a strange name, okay? So I'll tell you why it's this name, but it's called Put the Shovel Down. And what that means is, it comes from an old recovery saying. It means you hit your bottom when you put your shovel down, as in you don't have to suffer longer. You don't have to burn every bridge and lose everything to be done with this mess, whether you're the family member or the person or wherever you are in this system. Like, you could put the shovel down and say, this is my bottom right here, suffered enough, and start going another direction. So find me on YouTube at Put the Shovel Down.
Beautiful. I'll put that on the show notes over there so that people can find it easily. Thank you so much, Amber, for taking the time, for sharing, and for the work that you're doing, because, as you're saying, this has a huge ripple effect for everyone that you work with, their family members, and then what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for the work you're doing. We're like, I feel like you're like a little co-soldier out there with me. We're doing the same work.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, everyone, for being here, for listening and watching. What did you hear? If there's something that, resonated or that you'd like to share your experience anywhere that you're finding this episode, please let us know in the comments. Keep the conversation going. And as always, thank you for being there. And we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.